A very warm welcome to everyone to my podcast. Hopefully, this is one of the many more interesting podcasts that we will have.
Absolutely.
My name is Meet Joshi. I'm the group CEO for Flying Color, and I have with me our group managing director, Mamta. So, welcome, Mamta.
Thank you, Mi. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm extremely elated to be here today and looking forward to the discussion today.
Right. Nice to have you too. And today we are going to be discussing on the topic of succession planning and
Right.
asset protection in the UAE, especially with a little bit of focus on the Dubai International Financial Center or the DIFC.
It's an extremely interesting subject, and I have seen a lot of people who have been actively discussing, about asset protection and succession planning in UAE. Yeah, so I definitely look forward to gaining more insights from this discussion today.
Correct. I mean, it's a widely discussed topic
Absolutely,
nowadays,
yes.
especially in this age and time. And there are many subtopics to this, such as will registrations, foundations, holding companies, etc.
Right.
So we will try to see how much we can cover in this
Mm-hmm.
podcast, and maybe we will break it down into multiple podcasts.
Sure.
And definitely, I think you will be adding a lot of value to the discussion from the taxation side of things, given your background as a chartered accountant.
Absolutely, I'll be more than happy to discuss about the taxation side of thing. But before we dive deeper, I would like to ask, what are these terms, succession planning and asset protection? I think you should break it down into more layman friendly language so that our viewers can understand these terms better.
True. I mean, before I got into this industry as well, I also used to be confused with the terms.
Yeah, yeah.
They are more technical, but to break it down into more simpler language, succession planning is something where someone is trying to plan ahead
Right.
to see how their asset could be anything. It could be their business, it could be
Mm-hmm.
real estate, it could be cash, money, gold.
All assets.
Yeah,
Right.
so they're trying to plan how their assets are to be passed on to the right people. It
Mm-hmm.
could be their family members, it could be their children, or anyone, uh, without having any complexities in the future. Or you might have heard there are many legal disputes, or there are
Hmm.
many family disagreements when someone passes away.
Correct.
So succession planning is more planning on how to uh, pass on your assets to the right people when you're
Hmm.
not around.
Hmm.
Asset protection is more about securing whatever assets you have, and from any, you can say, unexpected risks such as legal disputes, any creditors against your name. So that is more about asset protection.
Right. So, but what is the distinction between succession planning and asset protection? Because many people use the word interchangeably. So, do they contradict each other when it's actually in practice?
Not really. They are actually quite complementary
Mm-hmm.
subjects. Uh, the clear distinction between them is succession planning is more about when you're not around or when someone passes away,
Okay.
how these assets uh, go to the people that they
Goes to the
want it
next
to go to,
generation, or let's say, yeah.
next generation, or whoever they want it to go to.
Right.
Uh, so it is more about once someone passes away, what
Hmm.
they want, what steps
How they
do,
want it
yeah.
to be distributed, let's say.
And asset protection is more about now, the
Hmm.
whatever assets you have currently, how do you protect them
Right.
while you're still around.
Right.
And they're quite complementary. As we will hear later in the podcast, there are many tools where both these boxes are ticked. So there people are planning while they're alive how to protect their assets, and once they pass away, how
Hmm.
do these assets get distributed.
Perfect. So, but how is the landscape in UAE pertaining to succession planning and asset protection? Like, how does it support it?
I mean, the landscape in UAE is ever evolving.
Right.
Uh,
Absolutely.
I mean, the leaders of the country and the government are efficiently taking many steps to give more tools to practice these concepts.
Right.
And but it's to be said that, over a very short period of time, the UAE has already come a long way
Right. Yeah.
in succession planning and asset protection, especially in the early 2000s, when the Dubai International Financial Center (DIFC) was introduced as a financial free zone. In Abu Dhabi, there is the Abu Dhabi Global Market. So these are common law frameworks, as
Wow.
opposed
Okay.
to the local civil or
The local
Sharia law.
laws. Right.
And they offer many tools for succession planning and asset protection, and they have done remarkably well over these past years. I was recently reading somewhere that there are 69,000 odd high net worth individuals.
69,000.
Yes,
Wow.
in the UAE, which is the highest in the Middle East.
Right.
And just the DIFC itself has about $800 billion
Whoa.
assets
That's
under
a
management.
great figure. Right.
These are assets being managed from the DIFC.
Right.
So it's an ever evolving landscape, to answer your question, but the UAE has already come a long way, and it is still taking further steps to not only align with the international best practices, but in several areas, UAE is setting the benchmark for international best practices.
That's what UAE is known for, right? Setting
Correct.
benchmarks. Okay, but so in the initial conversation, you mentioned that we will talk more about DIFC. So how does DIFC sort of stand out in supporting succession planning and asset protection?
Right. So DIFC is the more commonly known term, but the full term, the Dubai International Financial Center. It was established in 2004, and
Right.
the main vision behind this was to attract private individuals and financial firms into the country. At that time, it was a different time to be in Dubai, and
Correct. Yeah.
they were still adjusting to many of the international frameworks, and DIFC came as one of them, where it had the common law framework.
Right.
It started with that, but if I were to point out few of the standout points about DIFC, number one, as I said, it's a common law framework,
Right.
which is more internationally acceptable to not only financial firms, but also international investors.
Right. Yeah, that's
Uh,
very important.
Exactly. And secondly, DIFC has its own independent regulatory framework. So there is the DIFC courts. They handle all disputes within the DIFC. And there is the arbitration center as well.
Right.
The language is English, so that is more aligned again internationally.
Correct.
At the same time, they have their own regulatory bodies, such as the Dubai Financial Services Authority, the DFSA. So it's its own independent framework,
Right.
and it caters to the best practices in the market and internationally. And of course, being a free zone, it might also have several tax benefits. You might know much
Correct.
more about that. And end of the day, it is in Dubai. So Dubai being a global hub for international connectivity, so DIC is very well positioned, not only in terms of the framework, the law, but also the location.
Correct. I completely agree. So, I have, as I understand, DIFC offers many tools, to
Right.
structure the succession planning and asset protection. So, I mean, I've heard about foundations, wills, holding companies, etc. So, could you explain our viewers more about, foundations and wills, let's say?
Uh, so these are several deep topics
Yeah, I'm sure
by
there's.
itself. So which one do you want us to start with?
I believe we should start with wills first because that's somewhat a familiar topic with, known by many people.
All right. So if we were to talk about a will, in very
Right.
simple terms, will is a legal document
Hmm.
where the person who's writing the will is able to assign what they want or how they want their assets to be passed on in the
Right.
case that they pass away.
Hmm.
So it is more a tool for succession planning, not more about asset protection, because the assets still remain under the person who's writing the will, but
Right.
it helps in uh, basically passing on your assets in the way they want their assets to be passed on.
Hmm. Right, understood. So, can you talk more about wills in terms of, who is it applicable to, how easy it is to make? Can a resident, I mean, of course, residents can make it, but can even non-residents make the wills?
All right. So, I mean, to go more into details about the will, there are three courts over here that
Right.
where a will can be registered. So the Abu Dhabi Judicial Department
Mm-hmm.
(ADJD), then we have Dubai Court,
Right.
and the DIFC courts.
Hmm.
So these are the three courts where wills can be registered.
Right.
The good news is, I mean, the process of registering a will by itself is quite straightforward, quite fast. It can happen in a matter of a couple of days, in fact.
Wow, okay.
But the major time taken is more about drafting the will,
Correct.
because that
It's
is
like
where
a wish list, I would say, yeah, where you sort of,
kind of, I mean, the
uh,
person who is writing the will is writing more about how they wish their assets
hmm,
to be passed on. So that is where it takes a bit more time to draft the will.
right.
But in terms of eligibility, anyone is eligible, uh, regardless they are residents in the UAE or non-residents.
Okay.
Uh, as long as they have any kind of assets in the UAE, it makes sense for them to register a will.
Hmm.
I've seen normally there's quite a misconception that the term will is always attached to high net worth individuals or
Hmm. Hmm.
individuals having substantial assets, but
Right.
I don't 100% agree with that, because anyone having any kind of asset, even something as simple as a bank account, I believe should have a will in place.
Correct. Yeah, I completely second you on that. But I'm very curious to understand that what happens if somebody passes away without a will, and so how is it handled at that point in time?
So in the UAE, if someone passes away
Hmm.
without having a registered will,
Right.
what happens is traditionally the local civil law or the Sharia law
Hmm.
comes into the picture, which
Right.
means the local courts will decide what the assets of the person are. So they have to first
Hmm.
ascertain what the assets are,
Correct. Right.
and then the courts will decide how those assets are to be distributed as per the
Okay.
Sharia law.
Okay.
Lately, there have been a few changes in the personal status law around 2023,
Mm-hmm.
where non Muslims have been given a default that if a non Muslim passes away, then their UAE based assets are distributed by a default of 50% to the spouse
Okay.
and 50% to their children equally.
Okay.
But end of the day, it's a default setting. So
Hmm.
I still recommend people to register a will, because their wish might not be what the default states.
Yeah. Yeah.
And at the same time, wills also not only offer the planning of how the assets are to be
Mm-hmm.
distributed and to whom, but it also has few clauses such as guardianship. So if someone
Okay.
has minor children,
Right.
the will can state who the next legal guardian could be if the person
Right.
writing the will
Okay.
passes away.
So it's a lot more.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it basically it's very important in the UAE, where expats have residence visas, and if one of the parent, or if God forbid something happened to both
Right.
parents, then to determine the legal guardianship becomes a hassle and a challenge.
Right.
So
Yeah.
the will covers that part,
Hmm.
and in fact, the will also writes who the executors of the will are.
Okay.
So basically, what that means is that the executor has the legal right to represent the person before the courts if
Hmm.
the person were to pass away.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that also saves a lot of time, because it is already predetermined who can represent the
Correct.
person in the court
Right.
in the case of them passing away.
Wow. Okay. So I think will is extremely important, and as you very rightly highlighted, that it is not just for billionaires, who look at making wills, but it could be anybody who's based in UAE, having even a bank account or any kind of asset. I think absolutely should have a will. It's a must.
Correct. And I mean, now the process, as I told you, has become quite straightforward and easy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the cost, to be honest, is not really much. It's
Hmm.
it's highly affordable.
Hmm.
So it's right to say that it can be registered by anyone who has any kind of asset in the UAE.
Absolutely, I think it's a must when you are in UAE.
Correct.
How does somebody decide whether we should register a will, or whether we should, set up foundation? How are the foundations different than wills?
Okay, so there are two different tools altogether. So as I explained, will is more about succession planning, but not more about asset protection.
Hmm.
Foundations are so much more. They are quite complementary to each other. So it does not mean that if someone has a will, they should not have a foundation.
Right.
And if someone has a foundation, then they should not have a will. It's not like that. But foundation just offers the ticks more of the boxes. It also helps for not only succession planning but also asset protection.
Okay.
It's a much more deeper topic,
Right.
very much more interesting.
I'm sure.
So we can definitely dive into it. Maybe not maybe. I think surely we should cover it in our next podcast.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much, Meet. We had an absolutely insightful session, and I hope our viewers also had extremely insightful information out of this podcast.
Correct. Thank you so much for your time, and that is it from my side. And as Flying Color, a little bit of introduction to our group, that we've been in the UAE since 2004, and it's been about 21 years that we are in the business now, and we are into different lines of businesses. So we are a business setup firm, we are a DIFC registered corporate service provider. We are also into accounting and taxation. We are FTA agents for corporate tax and the value added tax. We are also a Ministry of Economy registered audit firm, which of course is taken care of by Mamta. We are into real estate brokerage in Dubai. That is actually one of our flagship
Correct.
businesses. And
Absolutely.
we are also into second citizenship services. So hoping to have many more insightful discussions.
Absolutely.
The
Yes.
concept of having the podcast was to basically have more of educational content
Content. Yes.
for the people who are interested in watching. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much.